My grandfather was in Vietnam too. He never talked about it.
What was his name, child?
They mocked his old tattoo, never imagining the silent storm brewing beneath the surface. He carried a secret, a burden of valor they couldn't comprehend. What happened in the New Holland diner that day wasn't just recognition. It was the unleashing of a truth decades in the making. Prepare for a twist you won't see coming. A ripple of laughter spread from a central table in the New Holland diner, their eyes fixed on the solitary figure in the corner. He was an old man, frail, his snow-white hair a stark contrast to the faded brown of his worn jacket. A glimpse of a peculiar tattoo on his left forearm, a dagger piercing an anchor, sparked their amusement. He sat there, quiet, nursing a glass of water, seemingly oblivious to their ridicule. But fate, it seemed, had a different script in store. Moments later, a distinguished-looking woman entered, her sharp gaze sweeping across the room until it locked onto that very tattoo. An unsettling silence descended. Would you, like the others, dismiss him, or would you sense the untold story etched onto his skin? Sunday morning painted the New Holland diner in hues of bustling activity. Veterans Day discounts had drawn a large crowd. At a secluded corner table sat a man in his early 80s, his thin frame hunched slightly. A metallic prosthetic leg was a silent testament to battles fought and survived. His meager meal consisted of a small plate and a glass of water. His name was Walter Jenkins, a name that held no resonance for the diners around him. Decades ago, he was a crucial, albeit unsung, part of a clandestine SEAL team. Today, he wore no uniform, no gleaming medals, just the faded jacket and the enigmatic tattoo on his left wrist. For boisterous men in their late 60s, their bellies preceding them, cast condescending glances his way. Probably got that off a cereal box. One snickered, eliciting guffaws from his companions. A real hero would have the chest puffed out, wouldn't you think? A young waitress, barely out of her teens, approached Walter, her brow furrowed with an apologetic air. "Sir," she began hesitantly, "I've received a complaint about your presence. Would you mind terribly if you took your meal outside?" Walter's gaze remained steady, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. He simply nodded, a sigh that barely disturbed the air escaping his lips. With painstaking slowness, he gathered his tray, his left hand gripping a gnarled cane for support. Each movement was a visible struggle. As he shuffled towards the exit, a young boy tugged at his mother's sleeve. "Mommy, why does that man walk like a robot?" The mother steered her son away, whispering, "He's just different. Don't stare." Passing the table of the mocking men, one of them, emboldened by the near silence that had fallen, boomed, "If that old codger was a SEAL, then my golf buddies are all astronauts." A fresh wave of laughter erupted, sharp and cruel. Walter betrayed no emotion, yet a single tear traced a lonely path down his weathered cheek, landing silently on the linoleum floor. No one intervened. The manager, a portly man with a practiced air of indifference, glanced his way but quickly busied himself with the cash register. Walter's shoulders sagged imperceptibly as he pushed open the heavy door, the bright sunlight momentarily blinding him. The outdoor seating area was sparsely occupied. He found a small, wobbly table and carefully placed his tray down before easing himself onto a metal chair that groaned under his weight. The eggs and toast, his long-anticipated Veterans Day treat, were rapidly cooling. He glanced back at the warm, convivial atmosphere inside, the easy camaraderie he was now excluded from. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was a familiar pattern, this invisible wall separating him from those who judged by appearances alone. Walter Jenkins wasn't just any veteran. He was a legend shrouded in secrecy, a logistics genius instrumental in countless covert operations during the Cold War. His prosthetic leg was a permanent reminder of a near-fatal encounter in hostile territory, a mission so classified its details would never see the light of day. Returning home decades ago, he was met not with accolades, but with silence, his contributions deemed too sensitive for public acknowledgement. He carved out a quiet life for himself, running a small antique repair shop, his skilled hands meticulously restoring forgotten treasures. He helped his neighbors, offering a kind word and a helping hand, but never spoke of his past. The tattoo and a faded photograph of 8 young men, arms slung around each other, were his only tangible links to that former life. Every Veterans Day, he sought out a simple meal, a solitary act of remembrance for the comrades he had lost, especially for Daniel O'Connell, his best friend, who had dreamt of sharing a burger at this very diner upon their return. They had been on a perilous mission to establish a vital communication relay deep within enemy lines. Just days before extraction, disaster struck. Walter, using his uncanny ability to navigate by the stars and his photographic memory for maps, had guided their small team through treacherous terrain. Daniel, ever the optimist, always carried a tattered menu from the New Holland diner, vowing they'd celebrate their survival with the diner's famous apple pie. Then came the explosion. Walter remembered the searing pain, the acrid smell of smoke, and then darkness. He awoke weeks later to learn of Daniel's sacrifice, a sacrifice that allowed the rest of their team to escape. His technical expertise in setting up secure communication lines had been the key to their survival, yet his role remained unacknowledged, a ghost in the annals of military history. The tattoo, the dagger piercing the anchor, was not an official emblem but a symbol of their tight-knit unit, a brotherhood forged in the crucible of conflict. As far as Walter knew, he was the last living member still bearing its mark. As Walter sat on the patio, a sleek black car pulled up outside. A sharply dressed woman in her late 50s, exuding an air of authority, stepped out. Her name was Eleanor Vance, a renowned investigative journalist known for unearthing long-buried truths. Eleanor's father had served in the same unit as Walter and Daniel. Years ago, on his deathbed, he had whispered fragmented stories of a mission gone wrong, of a selfless act of heroism by a man named Jenkins, and the tragic loss of a young man named Danny at a place called New Holland. Eleanor had dedicated years to piecing together the puzzle, the tattoo, a dagger through an anchor, her only consistent lead. Spotting Walter with the unmistakable mark on his arm sent a jolt of recognition through her. She walked purposefully towards him, her eyes intent. "Mr. Jenkins?" she inquired, her voice carrying a note of urgency. Walter looked up, surprised. "Yes, ma'am." Eleanor extended a hand, her grip firm. "My name is Eleanor Vance. I believe I knew your comrade, Daniel O'Connell." Walter's breath hitched. The name, spoken after so many years of silence, struck a deep chord. Just then, the young waitress, Sarah, who had served Walter earlier, rushed outside, her face etched with worry. "Mr. Jenkins, I overheard those awful men inside. I know what that tattoo means." Walter looked at her, a question in his tired eyes. Sarah's grandfather, it turned out, had also been a SEAL, and though he rarely spoke of his service, she had once seen a faded photograph of his unit, a photograph that included 8 young men, one of whom bore the same distinctive tattoo. She had never known his name, only that he was her grandfather's closest friend, a man named Danny. As Sarah spoke, her voice trembling with emotion, Eleanor's eyes widened in realization. Daniel O'Connell was your grandfather's best friend?" Sarah nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "They served together." Eleanor turned back to Walter, her voice filled with a newfound understanding. "Mr. Jenkins, I've been searching for you for a long time. Your story, Daniel's story. The truth deserves to be told." Just then, a hush fell over the patio. The manager, looking flustered, approached their table, followed by the 4 men who had mocked Walter earlier. "Sir," the manager stammered, we had no idea." One of the boisterous men stepped forward, his face pale. "Mr. Jenkins," he said, his voice surprisingly subdued. "My father, he served in Vietnam. He mentioned a man named Jenkins who saved his life during an ambush, a logistics officer." Walter stared at him, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. It was all coming together, decades of silence about to shatter. The unexpected arrival of Eleanor, Sarah's connection to Daniel, and the sudden remorse of the men who had ridiculed him. It was a confluence of events Walter could never have foreseen. The revenge he had unknowingly harbored, the desire for his and Daniel's sacrifices to be acknowledged, was about to be realized in a way he never imagined. The following weeks were a whirlwind. Eleanor's exposé, detailing Walter's heroic actions and the tragic loss of Daniel, ran on the front page of major newspapers. Sarah provided Eleanor with the faded photograph of her grandfather's unit, the same photograph Walter had carried for decades. The story resonated deeply with the public, a testament to the quiet heroism of so many unsung veterans. The four men from the diner, humbled and ashamed, publicly apologized to Walter. The town rallied around him. The New Holland Diner, now under new management, offered Walter free meals for life and renamed his corner booth the Silent Warrior's Corner. Walter's antique shop became a place of pilgrimage, veterans and their families coming to hear his stories, the stories he had kept locked away for so long. He spoke not of himself, but of Daniel and the others they had lost. A memorial was erected in the town square, a bronze statue depicting two young soldiers, one with a distinctive tattoo on his arm. The inscription read, "In honor of the silent heroes whose sacrifices paved the way for our freedom." Sarah, now a close friend, often visited Walter, sharing stories of the grandfather she barely knew, her bond with Walter a living testament to the enduring power of friendship and sacrifice. Eleanor continued her work, advocating for greater recognition for overlooked veterans. Years passed. Walter, now in his late 80s, frail but his eyes still sharp, attended the annual Veterans Day ceremony at the town square. As his name was called, a young woman stepped forward. It was Eleanor's daughter, a filmmaker who had been deeply moved by Walter's story. She announced her intention to make a documentary about Walter and his unit, ensuring their bravery would never be forgotten. Sitting in the front row was Sarah, holding the hand of her young son, who was named Daniel in honor of the grandfather he never met. As Walter looked out at the crowd, at the faces filled with respect and gratitude, a sense of peace washed over him. The silence had finally been broken. His and Daniel's sacrifices were no longer invisible. The unexpected events that unfolded in the New Holland Diner that fateful day had not only brought him recognition, but had also woven a tapestry of connection, remembrance, and healing that touched an entire community. His revenge wasn't about retribution. It was about the enduring legacy of his service and the memory of his friend finally being honored. When Walter passed away peacefully a few years later, his funeral was a town-wide event. His coffin was draped with the American flag, and the eulogy was given by Eleanor, who spoke of his quiet courage and the profound impact of his untold story. Sarah stood with her son, a small pin on her lapel depicting a dagger through an anchor. Walter's silence had indeed spoken volumes, and his life, marked by selfless service and quiet dignity, had become a beacon of inspiration for generations to come.